All right. Welcome, everyone. This is yours truly, David Morgan of themorganreport.com. And today, Tailor Kennedy, for the first time, is going to visit with me, and we're going to talk all things precious metals, and who knows where else we're going to go down the rabbit hole. Tailor, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you. I first of all, there's a lot of crossover in this industry, as you well know. But for those, I don't know, 20% or whatever that haven't heard of you, don't know you, let's give me a little bit of a background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my own show on ITM Trading on YouTube, Tailor-Made Economics. But basically everything I do is I try and just break down these complex different issues and topics, everything from the failing fiat currency, geopolitics, of course, gold and silver, everything in between, so that we can all understand them. Sometimes, when I first started getting into this, and I'm self-taught, I don't really have a financial background. Some of the stuff was like this. So I try my best to break it down so that, it's accessible for everyone.
Well, I have a degree in finance, and it's like this also because so much of it comes out of the rear end of a bull. So, anyway, one more question before we start in.
Yeah.
What's your following like? Do you know the demographics? I mean, you get more young people because you're young, or do you know?
It does skew slightly younger, but not as much as you would think. So I feel like there's a gap there. There's a lot I'm actually curious about trying, like getting outside of the studio. I recently am doing like a drive and talk with our president here in the car, doing some boots on the ground, more like investigative pieces, because I think like sometimes the style of content we're putting out too needs to maybe be shaken up a little bit to reach a younger audience as well.
Yeah, good. I will just comment on that briefly, but there seems to be nothing like, the face-to-face, even though so much is done on the web, as you know, and it's very efficient time-wise and a lot. But when you go to a live show, there's just a different energy about it. And so
Yeah.
people are very grateful just, to have, the opportunity to say hello or whatever. And, I've been, let's say, I picked the right word. I've gotten people upset in the past. I'm not perfect, never pretended to be. And there's one, I'm making this about me, I don't mean to, but he was really angry with me and he kind of chewed me out. I don't think it was a paid member, might have been, I forget. And I just listened to him and basically was polite and didn't react. I responded with just kind of a stoic, okay, fine. Anyway, the next show was like a year later and he came up to me and said, I am so sorry, I was wrong. I had drawn these conclusions and blah, 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 blah. And the other thing that I found was that sometimes going on stage one time, I remember, and this guy's he's just bulleting me with his rhetoric, and everything he said was written by Ted Butler, not by me. So anyway,
if you're not making some people upset, though, you're not doing something right. You know what I mean? Right. Isn't that the old saying? Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. All right. So why Tailor is resonating now, I just want to say your videos cut through because they don't just talk about price, they talk about access, control, and trust. Mm-hmm. The difference from most precious metals commentary, the way I see it. You're speaking to a generation that doesn't trust institutions, they don't trust Wall Street, they're not really happy with the banking system, as am I, and not even governments. And of course, precious metals fit that psychology. So why do you think that the fear today is less about inflation and more about losing control of assets altogether?
Yeah, I think that it's funny because it's been a big shift over the last couple of years in particular. I know you talk a lot about like an acceleration phase, and it does feel, I think even if people can't put a name to it, everyone knows that there are greater forces at play, right? You look around and nothing is really making sense the way it's being told to us. And I think more and more people are kind of waking up and realizing, hey, like, the math isn't mathing, right? No matter how you slice it and dice it. And I think that there are so many big forces at play when you look geopolitically, what's happening with the dollar, what's happening with BRICS, what's happening with gold and silver and everything else. And people are looking around and realizing digital, right, as we're moving into more digital control issues that are going to be popping up right and left. I think more people are realizing like, hey, something big is shifting. I don't know quite what it is, but I need to make sure I'm prepared for it. And that's what I try and I guess demystify a little bit or break down in the work I do.
Very good. So second point is the real shift is
Yeah.
from price risk to counterparty risk. And this is where you and I align pretty
Hmm.
strong. In past cycles, people bought gold and silver to hedge inflation. Today, we are buying to hedge counterparty failure. We're no longer asking, what is the price? We're asking, will I be able to get to it when I need it? So here's your questions. Do you agree that the biggest risk in the next crisis isn't volatility, it's inaccessibility?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. I think that you struck on something that I do talk about a lot. I say to people, when you're asking what is the price or what's the price going to be tomorrow, you're kind of missing the big picture of what's going on. It's not even about price for me. I mean, it is, of course, at the end of the day, we're all here to protect our wealth and, of course, hopefully grow our wealth. But at the same time, the reason why I don't focus on price is I focus on function and protecting yourself outside of the system. So volatility could be temporary. I mean, it could be, I feel like when I hear the word volatility, it doesn't quite capture the big picture shift that's happening, which for me is that we, at least in my life, I've lived within one monetary system that I have known in my lifetime. And I think that very quickly here, we're going to have a new monetary system. Like, I quite literally think that the one that we're in right now is coming to a close, and not enough people are realizing how big of a shift this is going to be. Counterparty risk, of course, is paramount for me. I mean, again, when we talk about trust is breaking down, not only in the dollar and in fiat currencies in general, but all the institutions, whether it's, again, banks or central banks or government or whatever it might be. I just think that for me, of course, the reason I love physical gold and silver is that there is no counterparty risk. And maybe it sounds kind of like an old school way of thinking, but I always tell people that's fine. Call me old fashioned. Like, they've been around for a long time for a reason. You know what I mean?
Sure. So how many people do you think don't own metal, but only a promise? In other words, they're in.
Oh, I have this conversation constantly. You know, in my, I say my real life, like outside of kind of the industry, right? Like my friends and family who aren't in the industry, when I talk to them about precious metals, about gold and silver, most, to be honest, still are not even aware of what I'm doing. They'll watch my videos to support, they start to get it, but there are so many people out there. I think it's easy for us, we're in a bubble, and you think, oh, everyone's kind of catching on. But I tell people all the time, like, retail, the normal person walking around out there, most people still have no idea what's happening. And those who do are starting to tiptoe in, or again, maybe they think they're protected, but they just have a claim. You know, they don't actually have the real thing. They don't even know what they have. Maybe they went to their advisor. I've had people sadly come to me and say, oh, I went to my financial advisor. I told them I want to diversify. And they said, great, we're going to put you into this and this and this and this. But it's like, if it all is dollar denominated, if it's all in the system, you still have that counterparty risk. And I think it's just an unlearning of what we've been taught as a society. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people aren't aware, but it's important now more than ever.
Okay, I want to talk a little on the illusion of liquidity. This was really where your audience resonates with you. Liquidity works perfectly until everyone needs it. You know, the ETFs, unallocated storage, pooled accounts, they all rely upon normal market functioning. Mm-hmm. What happens to the liquid paper metals in a weekend banking event?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, again, I always say, like, if things go upside down, which we know they're going to, like when, you know, for lack of a better word, you know what, hits the fan, and everyone's trying to get their hands on whatever they're going to get their hands on, at the end of the day, you're not going to get your actual physical metals, right? Like, there's not enough. We already know that the paper is infinite compared to the amount of actual supply there is. And I talk a lot about, I know you do too, of course, price suppression or market manipulation or paper versus the real deal. But at the end of the day, you're going to be left with nothing. You're going to be left with an IOU. You're going to be left with the fiat currency that's going to be worthless. I mean, it's not going to protect your wealth at all.
Drill down a little bit more. So how do you see the real distinction between owning the metal itself and being a creditor to the metal?
I feel like as far as being a creditor to the metal versus owning the metal is, again, it just comes down to a certainty. For me, if I want to protect my wealth, I want a certainty. I want to own the physical metal. For me, that is a non-negotiable. But I also just tell people like, hey, if you're looking for an investment, that's a different conversation, right? And that's where I think I go back to function again. If you're looking to protect your wealth with certainty, for me, that's physical. That's, I guess, the simplest way I put it.
Yeah, I want to add on to that a bit and get your response.
Yeah, please.
To me, like the creditor, I mean, which one? Is it a depository, a vaulting facility? But let's at the biggest picture, and that's, of course, the CME or the LBMA. And, they're creditors to someone buying a contract. And the contract says clearly that you must settle in cash if so deemed by us, the people writing the contract. You're signing it. So that to me is, first of all, a deal's a deal. So I have to go with that. Secondly, though, it protects the creditor because there's people out there buying a contract, paying full cash for it and getting a check instead. It doesn't happen often. It happens to the little guy, I think, more than the big guy. And that's just my perception based on input I've gotten over the years. People have sent me emails, say, hey, David, my broker stood for delivery and here's what happened. And they got a check. I don't want to belabor this point too much, Taylor. But
no, it's important.
My point is, let's take a creditor outside of that. I think we've both discussed that enough times. What about depository and the guy's an IRA custodian like First Delaware and they don't have all the metal they're supposed to be guarding? I mean, what happens there? This just drives me nuts. But I mean, you got to be darn careful. I just like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't think you can be careful enough, to be honest. I mean, I think, again, I'm not trying to be out here and scare people off completely, but I just don't think there's enough awareness of the risk that's involved. That's the bottom line. And I also think that as things continue to accelerate, that risk is only going to go up.
Great. All right, now we're going to get into the war here, not you and I. I'm trying to. I have a very sick sense of humor, but people know that. So gold versus silver. Yeah. Necessity versus optionality. Gold protects wealth. We know that. Silver protects civilizations. Silver isn't just money. It's energy, electronics, medicine, defense, AI. Gold can be revalued, but silver must be consumed. Do you see silver moving from precious metals to strategic metal in the public consciousness?
It's a good question. It's one that I feel like my stance is shifting on a little bit, actually. I feel like when I started here, we really study currency resets throughout history and how gold and silver perform during those currency resets. And traditionally, it always comes back to gold, right? Like you said, we know that gold is kind of like the anchor as far as a monetary metal is concerned. That's why central banks are stockpiling so much of it. And I mean, I talk a lot about like a new gold-based system that's being built today. That being said, silver obviously has also always had a monetary role, and it feels like the shift is happening, whether you're looking at India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, moving into silver from a monetary standpoint. I think we're only kind of starting to see the beginning there. And I think it makes sense to think that we're going to see naturally as we kind of shift again from a debt-based fiat paper system into a trust-based, physical asset commodity-driven system. I think that it makes sense that silver is going to have that position as well.
All right, this is a bit of a presupposition, but what happens when governments need silver more than investors need?
What do you mean? As far as price or as far as what?
Well, they need it in order to keep the AI system going.
Well,
they need it to keep the communication system going.
They're going to be snatching it up as much as they can. I think I listened to an interview that you had recently, and you were talking about like what happens when the first company, like as far as tech goes, like starts stockpiling silver, right? And then everyone else starts rushing in to do the exact same thing. I think we're going to see that not only with companies, but with central banks as well. Like, I think that it's going to be the tip of the iceberg, and then the floodgates are going to open. And I absolutely think we're just going to see a rush into it. More than what's happening now, like more than what most people are even prepared for.
Silver inventories are thin relative to demand, and most silver is a byproduct, not primary mining. And you can flip a switch and increase supply. You can't flip a switch and increase supply. So how do you explain a market where demand grows structurally, but supply can't respond?
Well, that's what, just paper versus physical. I mean, that's what we have right now. And it's a market that you can't trust. I mean, I think though, again, that demand for physical is going to be kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back here. We've already seen it quite a bit. I know I personally followed the CME outage very closely. Obviously, I can't prove anything, but when that happened, it was Thanksgiving weekend, because I remember I was home, I was prepping some meals, my phone started blowing up, I was looking on X, started following everything, and I thought, oh yeah, they're scared, and I think, again, we've seen this kind of dam starting to break situation more and more, and I think it's only a matter of time before it can't, in my opinion, continue to go on the way it has forever if demand for physical continues to grow, which it will.
Yeah, and that's
what do you think? Do you agree with that?
Well,
I'm curious your thoughts.
We'll get into it. At what point does price stop being the solution? I'll add on to that. So, it's a bid-ask spread. I offer silver at this, someone bids higher, bids lower, whatever, and then price solves the problem. But there could be, and I think it could happen, a point where price doesn't bring a solution because I'm not selling my silver for any amount. Or I need, like I said, moving back to what we just momentarily spoke about, when company X says I need, 20 million ounces of silver per year to stay in business, and my logistics guy is called by me, the CEO, I don't care what it costs. I'm not thinking in terms of price. I'm thinking in terms of ounces. I need 40 million ounces, 2-year supply, find a warehouse and put it in there. I want access to it. I don't even want it in the CME or the vaults of the COMEX. So anyway, not to belabor it too much, but I see that as a possibility. I'm not going to pound the table and go, it's unobtainium, absolutely. And I'll credit Mike Maloney for talking about that incessantly, and it could be true. I'm certainly not ruling it out. What say you?
Yeah, I think it could be true too. I do. And I agree. I mean, it's at the end of the day, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. There are always things that could change or shift or things that we don't foresee today. But if things continue the way they've been continuing and it's only going to accelerate, then absolutely, I think that we could see that for sure.
All right. Now the one that starts to get my nervous system tuned up. CBDCs, surveillance, and the end of neutral money. This is one of your strongest lanes, the way I see it watching your videos. CBDCs aren't about convenience. They're about permission. Programmable money changes the relationship between the citizens and the states. So what worries you more, inflation or financial surveillance?
Oh, financial surveillance completely. I mean, CBDCs for me are the death of freedom, privacy. I'm not trying to sound extremist, but I truly believe that. I mean, if you think about it, right, China, obviously with the CBDC, Russia with the CBDC, different phases, but you can already see how it's being used, whether it's your savings potentially expiring in Russia. Let's say there was a CBDC article I was reading where parents could, program the currency was essentially programmable for the children so they could only spend it at their school for the lunch, right? Imagine a government now having this control where you can only spend your funds on X, Y, and Z. The scariest part for me too with CBDCs is once everyone's in the system, you're trapped. There are no escapes, right? And that's why I think too, I have such urgency around a lot of the messaging I'm talking about, is because once the escape hatches are closed, where are you going to go, right? And that's why I think it's so important to make sure that you're protected outside of the system now, because once they kind of batten down the hatches and they get everyone inside, and I think they're going to do it through, some kind of crisis. I think things will get so bad that they will come to you and say, we have the answer, we have the solution. Maybe it's a pre-funded account, right? Maybe it's some kind of incentive or changing the mindset around it. But when that day comes, unfortunately, I think there are going to be a lot of people who, again, out of desperation, you can't blame, it's human nature, but I think that's why it's important to be protected now. Because in my opinion, things are going to get a lot worse before that's really ushered in, because there is a lot more resistance here in the West in particular.
We think a lot alike, and you know that. So how can sound money exist in a programmable system?
Yeah, I mean, the same way it would exist in any system, I think that it would become something that, again, you would protect your wealth with outside of the system. I talk a lot about community as well and how it's important to find like-minded people, establish those kind of networks now. I think that a big question I get a lot, actually, that I don't have a perfect answer for is we talk about kind of this idea of trading in your fiat currency for gold or silver, right? And then when the time comes, if you need to exchange it back into the fiat currency to purchase whatever you need to, then you have that option versus not having the option at all, right? And at that point, the fiat currency is going to be worth a lot less. People go, okay, so let's say we're in the future, there's a CBDC, I need to purchase something that requires using that CBDC. Am I going to have an option to like use my gold and silver, right? Like actually to get out. And to be honest, I don't have a perfect answer for that. I don't know if you do, but right now the way I see it is like it's going to be a lot of outside of the system situation. And that's why I think, again, it's important to make those connections now. But I don't know if you have a better answer for that, because that is something I get asked a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I do, but the way I see it, and this is based on maybe more experience and some of the readings I've done. A friend of mine, Franklin Sanders, who's a big silver guy in Tennessee. He and I have known each other for decades. Wrote a book called Highland, and it has to do with after the system resets and you're either in it or you're not.
Yeah.
I see someone in the system that is, I'll call them a broker, that brokers between in the system and outside the system. So I want something that requires a CBDC for our community, and so he does it in his name and then sells it to me in the black market, which is really the free market, and I obtain it with silver, and so the community has it. I see that as a possibility.
Yeah.
But those people are taking a big risk. I mean, that's the point, man, in Vietnam, running by yourself up front, no protection. But I think those people will exist. I think there's always a plethora of different ideologies in the human experience, and someone may opt in or forced in. If they don't opt in, they're not going to be able to feed their kids. What are you going to do? I mean, what would I do? I'd probably do it to feed my kids, right?
Yeah.
Now you're in, but your heart is in the freedom movement. And so anyway, I don't want to belabor it. That's the only thing I could add on. If you want to comment on that, feel free.
No, I agree. That makes perfect sense. And I do think that that's the thing where people ask those kinds of questions. I think they're asking it, of course, out of fear, because it is scary to think about that kind of future. But I think as long as you're aware of what's going on, you understand the forces at play, you're taking action to protect yourself now, then you're at least setting yourself up for the best chance of protecting your wealth and your freedom and your privacy in the future. And I think that's the only solace we can really take from that. But it's a good one to hold on to.
What mistakes do you see first-time metal buyers make?
Let's see. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
I'll help you along.
Yeah, tell me your
well, I've been here for a long time. One of them is getting emotional and buying, all of it at once, Silver's making a new high or whatever, and they hear you or me or Mike Maloney or whomever, Andy Checkman. Oh my God, they're right, blah, 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 blah. And they go, well, I've got, $10,111 in my checking account. And they buy $9,900 worth of metal. Bang. And emotionally, they're relieved. Oh, I've done the right thing. And then the price drops 25% over the next 2 years or something. And now they're upset. And usually some of these people blame, Mike, me, you, whomever, because we made them do it. Hell, I don't even know who these people are. I'm just giving them information. But so that's one. I see people going all in as a reaction rather than a response. That would be the first one I would say. And the other one is kind of buying too much. I have indicated in the rules of silver investing 10% is enough. I've upped that to as much as 20%. I'm over that personally, but that's my personal choice. But, nature preaches balance. So in my view, you must have some precious metals in today's world. But that doesn't mean it has to be 100% or 80 or whatever. So there's the right amount and timing. So if you don't know how to time a market, and very few of us do it perfectly, I certainly don't. I'm a good market timer, better than most, but not perfect. Point being that if you just stack, You buy that $100 a month or 1,000 a month or 10,000 a month or whatever your budget is, you will get a good average price over time as long as the market's in a bull market.
I was going to say, so it's funny because I agree with some points of that. And then I probably actually, as you were talking, disagree with one, which is the reason I don't focus so much on price, right? Is more so that I believe you should just be buying. If it makes sense for you in your financial situation, continue to buy what you need. Of course, have cash available for emergencies. Make sure you have X, Y, and Z. Everyone's financial situation is different, right? But I think when people buy and they're so focused on the price, again, for me, they're viewing it just as an investment. And I think what I try and do is work with people to make sure they understand the why, again, they're buying it, right? That it's bigger than just an investment. I mean, of course, again, we all are here. We want to make a profit, but at the same time, like it truly is also your insurance policy against what's happening in the world right now, you know, and I think it gives people a reason that they can sleep well at night. So, you know, if people are focused on micro movements, then for me, as far as what I'm doing, I feel like often then maybe I didn't do a good enough job of making sure they understood, you know what I mean? Again, the reasons why they're buying it and holding it, you know?
That's a two-part question. Do you think most investors underestimate the political risk to stored assets, and is diversification of storage becoming as important as diversification?
Yes, I do believe that they underestimate. Absolutely. Of course, again, it goes back to the counterparty risk component of it. And, you know, I think that it all comes down to what works best for you and doing your research. Everyone's different again, right? Like for me personally, I'm not going to keep my gold and silver at my house because I'm a public figure online. And for safety reasons, I can't do it. If I wasn't out here with my face, though, on the screen, you better believe I would not risk any kind of counterparty being involved, whether that's, you know, a vault or anywhere else that you're storing. But yes, I absolutely do think that people underestimate.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty much getting ready to wrap it up. So what will the next crisis, why it will look different? The last crisis was about leverage. This one is about trust. When trust breaks, we can see the acceleration. What signals are you watching that tell you the system is tightening?
Oh, that's a big question. Everything. But no, this crisis is going to be different for a number of reasons. The biggest one of all is that, you know, it's been a long time since we had a different global reserve currency than the dollar. And the last time we had that, if we go back to, you know, whatever, 100 years ago, post 100 years ago, I mean, the world was not, even Bretton Woods, let's go back to 1944. I'm big on history, but at that time, right, if you were interested in contacting someone across the globe, it could take weeks for your letter to reach them. You know, most households didn't have a TV at that time, right? There were no cell phones. There was no internet. No one had a laptop, right? Like everything was so different. Today, the world is so interconnected. Every single piece moves in tandem, right? Something shifts over here, it's going to impact something over here. So we live in such a different world that with the global reserve currency, the dollar failing, and honestly, global debt and trust in fiat in general failing, it's going to be unlike anything we've ever lived through before. Now, you can see this through, of course, watching, you know, the bond market. If you're looking at treasuries, you know that demand for U.S. debt is declining. And this is something I talk about a lot too. People come to me and they say, well, there will always be demand for U.S. debt. And I always say, well, at what price, right? Because it's kind of like as demand declines and you need to issue more debt at higher rates, right? That means that they're going to be costing more to service the debt, which means you need to issue more debt. It's going to continue and continue and continue. And that's why we see all these nations saying this is garbage, right? We're moving away from this and we're moving into something we can trust, gold. So I'm looking at what, of course, foreign nations are doing. I'm following BRICS really closely, China in particular, not just stockpiling gold and what's happening over there, but actually creating new infrastructure to support a new monetary system. I'm following, of course, our treasury market really closely, seeing everything that's happening there. And like I said, anytime a move happens anywhere globally, really, it's kind of like the ripple effect is huge. So there's a lot at play right now. But I don't know if that answered your question. I could probably go on about that one for a while.
No, you did well, and I'll add to it. I think what a lot of people really don't get is that the current administration wants to lower interest rates. And generally speaking, I'm not against the credit system or going into debt judiciously, but they don't seem to grasp is that we're at a point where lowering interest rates normally will bring more robust economic activity to everyone. Housing mortgages are lower, car loans are less, and all that stuff. But most of that will not exist with a lowering of interest rates because it's being crowded out by the military, Social Security, and debt interest payments. In other words, they can lower interest rates all they want, but not for a thought experiment. This isn't 100% true, but the idea is very sound that most of that new, cheaper money doesn't go to the public where it can do anything, where it can grow the economy, where it can bring in new businesses or whatever. It's all going to obligations that are required by the current system. And the new, cheaper money just goes to keep the money system alive rather than any new productive capacity. Now, that's a bit extreme, but it's closer to the truth than it is not.
No, I fully believe that. Every new dollar is having less of an impact, right?
Yes.
And I mean, if you look, defense is our third largest item after, interest. It's higher than our entire defense budget. I mean, that's insane, right? And I talk about this a lot too, because again, so many people in my real life come to me and they say, oh, the debt's been there forever. Oh, nothing. It's just like a old school way of thinking because we have lived for so long and people have been hooting and hollering for such a long time. But I'm always trying to explain to people like, no, this is truly when unsustainable breaks, right? And that's where we're at today. And I don't think enough people realize that.
All right. So if someone listened to this conversation that does nothing, what do you think they wish they had done 3 years from now?
Oh, buy gold and silver, right? I think there will be a point where all of us will say, I wish we had more gold and silver, right? And it's not like, I mean, people say that today. People lament, they sit around and go, oh, I wish I'd bought when, or, I should have bought more, blah, blah. But there will be a point, and I don't want to go dark with this on the end, but there will be a point where truly people will in their soul say, I wish I had more gold and silver. I wish I had gold and silver, because things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. And unfortunately, that means a lot of pain for a lot of people who aren't prepared.
Well, Taylor, it's been a real pleasure. Is there anything that you want to say? We want to, of course, get your social media and whatever else you want to talk about so people know where to find you. So why don't we go through that and any closing statement you'd like to make?
Awesome. Yeah. So you can find me on YouTube at ITM Trading. Like I said, I have a show on there, Tailor Made Economics. And then you can follow me on X at Tailor Kenney ITM. And honestly, David, like I was telling you right before we hopped on, I'm just honored to be here. It means a lot that you reached out and invited me on, and just very, very excited to have this chat with you.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and close out, but markets reset, systems change, but honest money has outlived every empire that tried to replace it. That's why these conversations. Taylor, thank you very much.
Thank you.